Welcome to another episode of Courageous Me. And this is going to be a really interesting episode because today I've got the woman. Her name is Steph Higgins, and she's actually a camp instructor at the Summit Adventure Park. Now, this is the place where, if you've heard a previous episode of A Girls' Weekend with Michelle Roberts, this is the instructor who actually took us through 2 full days of serious hard yakka obstacles and all of that kind of massive stuff that required courage. Also, when I did my retreat earlier this year, Steph also, I needed to have her, and she was our instructor that took all of the women on the retreat through a similar obstacle course. So this is one woman who she deals every single day with courage, and we're going to get some really good, inspiring conversations going. So Steph, before we really get in and get to know a little bit more about you, what excites you to have a conversation with me today about courage?
Well, I think, Kim, as you said, I work in an environment where I see people step out of their comfort zone every single day, all the time in any activity from every age too, from grade fours all the way up to adults. So I think it really excites me to talk about courage because there's so much uncertainty in this world, and there's so many times where we have to make decisions based on, feeling and responding to a situation that you've got to find courage from somewhere. And it's not something that someone just is, it's something that you just have to generate. And that's, in places like this or places that, outside of this as well, life coaching. But I think, this conversation is probably one of the key conversations that, drives a lot of people to act and actually become more courageous. Well, just like I'm doing right now, to be honest. Kind of makes me a little bit uncomfortable talking about it, but it's kind of strange in that way, I guess. But
Which I
yeah.
think is a beautiful, turning of the tides, isn't it? Like
Mm.
you've had me on the other side where I've had to find courage to do some really gut-wrenching things, and yet,
Yeah,
yet
absolutely.
I'm very comfortable sitting on a podcast. So yeah,
Yeah.
Right. So I love that when you talked about it then, like you work from those that are still like kids and at
Yeah.
school right through to grown-ups. Do you think courage plays out differently depending on age? Like, do you think as we get older, we get more or less courageous? What are your thoughts?
I think I see a lot of people when they're younger willing to be more courageous and try new things because of the lack of life experience they've had. Like they're new to things, they're still figuring things out, who they are, what they want to be. As you get older, I think as more happens to you, you become more guarded, more cautious about what you choose to do next. And then it almost becomes like you're protecting yourself a lot more. So the older you get, the more things happen to you, the more of a shield you have to kind of battle to fight your way out of it. Because I think that's what I see the most in adults, especially that, so much has happened to us. We take that with us and we carry that with us as baggage. So when we try to do new things, those things that are behind us are holding us back. We wear them almost like a badge of honor. And unfortunately, we sometimes need to take those, layers off to then deal with the real issue or deal with the real thing. And yeah, find that courage within us.
And I guess
And
for some people, those layers would be pretty thick, deep, right? So
absolutely,
taking
yeah.
them off is not an easy thing. So
No,
before we go any further, because obviously you and I know what we're talking about, can you
yeah,
just give everyone listening an idea of, when we're talking about the work that you do,
yeah.
what it is that you actually do? So there's some context for why you see
Yeah.
people in courageous situations every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, I'm an activity instructor. So as an activity instructor and a bit of a coach, we take you on outdoor activities that take you off the ground, like underground in a cave. We expose you to uncomfortable situations, taking you through obstacle courses, initiative, team building challenges, and opportunities for you guys really to step out of that comfort zone. If you have an uncomfortability, whereas heights, you might have uncomfortability with dark spaces or small spaces, or just really getting muddy or uncomfortable in a situation, we're here to kind of coach you through it, right? We present you with the opportunity to step into those uncomfortable situations, and then through that, then work our way through the problem, work our way through the feeling rather than avoid it. And that then translates into everyday life. We have debriefs afterwards because we find that the lesson actually happens afterwards. You experience what you experience and then you learn after. We learn that life is exactly the same. So coming to an adventure based program, you're learning how to do these things through through outdoor adventures that put us in uncomfortable situations. It's by design and it's beautiful. I honestly, yeah, love what I do. And it's something that, yeah, excites me every time I talk about it. But yeah, that's what I do basically.
I love that you call it beautiful because I know when I came down and had that weekend last year, I don't know that I would have called it beautiful the moment before you're about to, walk up a equivalent of a 3-story tall
Oh,
building
yeah.
and jump off and I remember the cold water in the middle of winter, swimming through it, thinking, what else is swimming in here with me? However, I do agree with you when you call it beautiful because when you've done it, when you survive it, when you then debriefed us, and we're all sitting there going, oh my God, we survived that. We got through that. We let our mind tell us that we can do it, even though our bodies might have gone in at protesting. And that
Yeah.
debrief, that almost like, well, one, we did high five, but also that internal high fiving that went on. You
Yeah.
couldn't beat that. So I do understand where, yes, where you do explain it as beautiful. So
Yeah,
and I do want to speak more about this shortly.
of
However,
course.
given that you are doing this every day and you are helping people face a lot of their fears, some of the fears that they've been carrying around as baggage for a long time, where do you think this has stemmed from in your life? Like, where did you have to really go back and
Mhm.
find some courage to do something? And again, I don't care how far you go back or in what
Yeah.
context, but can you share a little bit about courage and where it's played out in your life personally?
Yeah, for sure. So it all stems from I kind of why my purpose and my why between what I feel like I like to do with my time, my energy. I've always found that even when I was in school and going out of school, fresh out of it, I always like to connect with people on another level. I always like that genuine connection, genuine conversation. And I realize it's because I like to care about those connections and conversations we have, which makes doing hard things easier because when you have a connection with somebody, they're willing to work with it through you. And working with troubled youth in the past, as well as clients every age in between, I found that going through outdoor education, going through personal training, going through, mental health, first aid and counseling, it was something all connected together. Like all of it just involved people. And I love people. I love how they operate. I love that people aren't aware of what they can fully do. Um, to the level of me giving them an invitation to kind of open themselves up, to look at themselves in the mirror and kind of go, well, I am more than I think, and kind of be proud of who they are when they look in the mirror. So that's anybody of any age. And if I can get that opportunity out to somebody, I find that that gives me great purpose and great sense of accomplishment in me. But it started with, I guess my ability to care about others, but also learn to care about myself. I'm a very much an extroverted person and I like to care about everyone else. But when it came to putting myself first, even to this day, I find that it's quite tricky to do because I care about everyone so much. But then when I turn around and I go, all right, we'll take all those things away during COVID, for instance, I had to look at within myself and go, wow, who am I and what do I want? What do I want to do and who am I as a person without all these extra people to really give all my energy to? So I really had to start putting energy back into myself. And that was really challenging. I found that I had to pull myself back out of it and go, all right, well, what do I like to do? Who am I? What are my interests? And then I just stripped myself back and went, okay, well, what's my intention here? What can I work my way through to build myself up to who I want to be again and how I can feel more like how I want to feel? Because I can say it's me all I want, but, I build who I want to be, right? I get to choose who I get to be in a day. So when saying that, I worked my through drawing intentions and gratitude in the morning, making a plan, making myself, more physically active, going out, walking with my dog every day. I have an electric skateboard that I like to go skating around because that helps clear my mind a lot. Spending time with my husband, quality time, and getting to actually spend quality time with my family as well, filling up all my cups or my buckets because if I wasn't doing that, I found that I was depriving myself from who I wanted to be and who I was. So it was constantly fighting myself, which didn't feel great. So putting myself first also happened when I was, in 2018, way back when I had about, I think I had 9 different jobs. And again, I've done a lot of things. So I worked for several different camps in the past, and I had to work for all these different companies and all these different bosses, all these different people telling me what to do and how to do things. It was great. I had so much variety in my life, but I didn't have a break. And the variety was awesome. And I loved what I did and I was loving what I was doing. And then I realized that, I can do anything. But then my body and my soul really like told me that I couldn't do everything. I can do anything, but I can't do everything. So when I stopped for a minute after doing, I remember a 48-day stint of work, not stopping, not having a break. My body did it for me. So I stopped and my body decided to, put me in a bit of I think I got pneumonia for like a week. Like I fully was quite sick. So I had to like stop for a full on 2 weeks and rest. So half of it was resting, rest of it was stopping. And I realized in that moment that I needed to take action because I was burning myself out. And I can give so much, but I can't give anything to anybody if I'm no good to myself. So again, that was another time where I had to find that strength to go up to my jobs and go, all right, I need to prioritize and actually put in times I want off when I want it off. I had to call them up and go, hey, I can't do that shift. I can't do that week because I need time for me. And that took a lot for me to do because I don't like disappointing people. I want to perform. I want to do stuff for people. I want to help. But I have to help myself. So I had to make those phone calls. I had to quit some jobs. I had to scale it back and then make those hard decisions. And by doing that, I could honestly focus more of my attention, more of me into the jobs I really, really wanted to do, really, really focus on, which actually brings us to what I'm doing today. I have 2 jobs currently. I work with troubled youth at Wombat Corner Camp during holidays, and I also work at the Adventure Camp here full-time as well. So 2 jobs, but 2 jobs I absolutely love. So scale it back from 9.
But isn't it interesting? And just listening, I've got so many things I want to ask you.
Oh, of course.
But that journey of going back and going, I'm great at giving to everyone else, great at looking after everyone else, caring for everybody else. I care for people. I want to help them. Yeah. However, and this is not just limited to any person in any one role, but how hard it is and how much courage it takes to go, hang on, you've got to also look after yourself. Yeah. And isn't it ironic though that you very easily, give all your time and energy away to others, but when you've got to take it for yourself, you feel guilty or you feel selfish or you feel like, you're almost letting others down if you're taking care or prioritizing yourself. I hear this all the time with people in general, but particularly women. And it takes courage. And exactly what you said, because you weren't obeying, your body goes, no, you're not hearing our lesson. We're going to teach you ourselves, which means we're going to give you a break, not when you're planning it either, and we're going to take you out for 2 weeks. So pneumonia obviously did that to you. What did you, on that journey, what did you learn about you that maybe you didn't know in the past? Like, what were some reflections that you had as you are going on that inner journey and looking at who you are and what you needed? What came out of that?
I think it came back to, I guess, some of the core beliefs I had about myself in the past. And when I look back at what was my limiting kind of beliefs about myself, it came up very clearly that I didn't feel like I was enough or I was ever doing enough. One of my core beliefs are still to this day. I honestly feel like in certain aspects of my life, I'm still not enough. And that's a reality that I've accepted, but I'm working through. I haven't accepted it and I'm not going to keep it as such, but I am definitely actively working on it still. I realized that I'm not good enough limiting belief was holding me back from so much, seeing myself in a different light, allowing myself to be the victor and not the person that was, the victim in those situations. I'm actually the person worth caring about and, giving time to myself. So I had to really kind of put effort into my own mental health, really. And look back. So I realized through my limiting belief of, not being enough, that I really had to, accept and acknowledge my mental health and be willing to work through it. And that was part of my journey when it started about 7 to 8 years ago when I started working here. A lot of those things that I teach have actually become more of a personal development for me. And that's been the best thing ever. I get to teach it, but I also get to practice it myself.
Don't you find that though? I find exactly the same thing. Like if I was to look at all my limiting beliefs, not being enough, not being good enough, not being worthy enough would be my biggest one too. And it's a lot of the work that I do with my clients. And yet it's the one thing that I've always needed to learn myself. So it's so interesting that you said, and I bet you see this one come out a lot with the work that you do, and then how it plays out when you're putting people in these confronting situations where they do have to go back and learn a bit about it. And so that's fascinating that you've learned that about yourself. What are some of the things that you do then when it does trip you up? And again, having the awareness of it, I think that is just, it's probably one of the biggest breakthroughs, right? It doesn't mean you're cured. It's not like a disease
Not
you can cure it. It's something that
Not
you
at
do
all.
need to carry on. You've got to work on it all the time. What are some of the things, if you do have those moments where you are feeling like you're not enough, what do you do to either catch it or to combat it?
So what I have found works really well with combating or even confronting and being aware of it is kind of setting my day up for success, or having very clear intentions about what I want to do, and having affirmations of who I am, reminding myself who I am. So it comes back to like morning intention, like in the morning, setting an intention what I want out of the day, who I want to be, and reminding myself of those affirmations of who I am to my core, and reminding myself that, you know, I am kind. I am compassionate. I am super passionate about what I do. I'm calm. I'm certain. I'm enthusiastic. All these things that I am, I know I am all these things. But it's so hard when all the other stuff is coming into your brain and it's clouding your judgment. It's clouding your thoughts and your feelings. And it's really just overriding those responses and filling us with reaction. So when I feel myself getting out of hand, feeling myself getting really anxious, I find that, stopping for a minute and pulling myself back to gratitude as well. Focusing, gratitude's a big part of my life. I think gratitude's pulled me through a lot of things. When I feel like I'm out of my depth, I can look back and think about 10 things I'm grateful for, what I'm grateful for, who I'm grateful for. And I think that is the coolest thing ever. I can close my eyes and I can make a phone call. I can literally look outside and enjoy the present moment. But grounding myself in the present moment is probably the best thing when you realize you're out of your depth, to zone back in, almost like a lens and a camera. You're too focused to zone back out again and kind of see the bigger picture and go, all right, well, this is locating myself. This is where I am at the moment. This is how I'm feeling. How do I want to feel? How do I want to proceed? What do I want to do? So that's the best thing I could do. So through intention, through gratitude, especially gratitude, that one's gotten me through a lot. But setting an intention, a clear idea of knowing exactly what I want to do is so handy, because it helps me, remind myself who I am. And through that, work through what I want to do next. So
that's beautiful. And you do that every single day?
I do that most days. So there are definitely points. I definitely feel like I would say I did it every day during COVID, and that was great. But then it's of course a pattern. It's a habit, right? So the habit is when you do it every single day, it works really well. But like anyone, I'm human. I don't do it every day. But when I do the intention, when I do the gratitude, I notice the difference tenfold, like all the time. So I definitely find I do an intention when I'm feeling a lot more low, when I'm feeling lower than usual. I will always deliberately make myself set an intention in gratitude, because I know that that's going to help me refocus my energy back into what I want and where I want to go, if I feel like I'm losing that a bit. But yeah,
And
that
how do
definitely
you
helps.
set that? Like when you say you set your intentions and you set who you want to be for the day, do
Yep.
you do it? Do you do it through meditation? Do you just do it through telling yourself? What's your sort of ritual to allow that to come into the beginning of your day before you get going?
Right. So there's a few different ways I do it. So I've worked on different kind of patterns as well. So for me, it's going for a skate or going for a walk, and like talking myself through the process. Sometimes I do record myself and listen back to it so I can hear it. And then sometimes I do write it on my phone, and I kind of just write different things down. Or I have a book. I have a journal as well. But if I have the time to sit down at a cafe or in my room, I'll actually sit down and have a coffee, sit in a space where it's neutral, and I will take 5 minutes, 10 minutes out of my day. I listen to some music, put myself in the right state, and then I'll start with 2 things I want to do that day. Just 2. And it can be as simple focus as I want to be more hydrated today. Or it could be I want to make someone laugh, make someone smile, or have a genuine connection. Like, it could be so simple. And then you go to the I ams just to remind you who you are. And I usually do that until I feel it. So sometimes I can go, I am passionate. And sometimes that's enough. And I feel that I can move on. But sometimes I can write up to like 10 things. And that actually leads me into gratitude, the last thing I do. So I end on gratitude because that helps us feel good. So by the end of it, I write a list as long as I can. And I write for as long as I can until I can feel grateful. And that sometimes takes 5 things, 10 things, sometimes 20. Like honestly, sometimes it's hard to be grateful for things because you're stuck. So I just keep writing until I feel it. And if I do that and all those things in that order, then I find that then completes my I guess ritual for that day, that morning.
Makes such a difference to the day, though, when you start off doing that. What I love is
Yeah.
a lot of I do all of those things in a slightly different way.
Yeah, of course.
But with the gratitude list, you often hear about you write 10 things. I love what you said, though, that you just keep writing until you feel it, because it's very
Yeah.
easy to just write things on a list,
Yeah.
like the words or say the words, but not actually feel it in your body. And you just keep going until you feel it. That's absolutely golden. And if I can share something really daggy with you. So
Yeah.
the I ams and the intentions and what have you, I wrote them all out. I recorded them. I added music, goes for 9 minutes. I
Yeah.
listen to that every single morning.
Oh, awesome.
And because
Good
it's my
ads.
voice, it's
Of
my
course.
voice. And I start off by
Mm.
saying, Kim, you are. So it's me telling me in my voice, you're actually the first person I've ever told that to. So there you go.
That's awesome. It's so
Yeah,
good though.
we do what
Consistent.
works for us, right? It's really
Yeah.
important. Hey, listen, you said something which I thought was absolutely beautiful. I might not word it exactly as you said it. You said, I can do anything, but I can't do everything. That was
Yeah.
just beautiful. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
So I feel like a lot of the time we have different buckets. We have different kind of priorities in our lives. So we have our main areas like you got your relationships, you've got your hobbies, you've got your work, you've got your finances, you've got your like spiritual things. So it can be religion, it can be anything you want, but spiritually meditation as well. And then you've got friends as well. So you got like 6 categories in your life that everyone has. And on a daily basis, we need to fill these like needs that we have and in a day that we need to meet. And we want to fill these buckets up as much as possible. But the thing is, you only have a certain amount of liquid in your day. And the more gratitude you have, the more you have to give, the more awareness you have to have that you want to put them in certain areas, right? You can spread yourself thin and fill every single bucket up if you want to, but that's not realistic. It's about changing it up every week. It's about being aware of where you're putting your energy and going, all right, well, next week, where do I want those buckets to be filled next? Because again, that doing anything, you can do anything. You can do all of it if you want to. But again, everything is not realistic. That's not serving anybody. It's definitely not serving you. So I find that in those areas in my life, for example, I would say if I wanted to focus on work, friends, and my hobbies, that week will be full of skating with friends, going for coffees, going to the gym, working with mates, and actually hanging out afterwards, and doing the things I love. But those 3 things will be the key highlight of that week because that's what I want. And those buckets will be overflowing with gratitude, overflowing with energy. But the other ones, just because they're empty doesn't mean they're not there. They're of course there. But sometimes you just need to be aware that if after a while there's a pattern of, I didn't talk to my family for a little while and I didn't connect with them after a little while. And I felt that I love my family. And I feel like now I go see them once a week. Every Sunday I try my best to go over to their house and see them, even if it's just a hi or a quick catch up. That then fills my bucket up, and even just that connection that I seeked. But I had to have that awareness first that
Mm.
was making me feel off. But yeah, that's what I mean by like anything, right? But you can't do everything. So just having that awareness of those different areas in your life and checking with yourself weekly, monthly, however you want.
What a beautiful analogy. And do you know what's making me giggle is I do remember when we did the Girls Adventure Weekend, and one of the activities was we had to fill a bucket. We all had little buckets and we had to fill this big bucket, but the big bucket had holes in it. So just
Yeah.
as you throw water in, the water would be flowing out. So when you said buckets and filling buckets, I'm like, fruit. And
Yeah.
again, that, metaphorically speaking, in life, our buckets do get holes in them and we do
Mhm.
keep trying to fill them up and they keep emptying really quickly. So those buckets sometimes need more energy to actually, as you say, to fill them. But what a
Yeah.
beautiful analogy that, you can't fill all the buckets fully all the time,
Mm.
but where there are different priorities that you need to focus on and putting the energy into that, I think that's absolutely glorious. So thank you for sharing that. That's really insightful. Yeah. So with your work, right? So you've got to get up every day and help people confront some of these obstacles that, like I said, for some people, it's years and years and years of ingrained baggage for them
Yeah.
to even be able to, like step up onto the first ladder rung or to jump off or whatever. How do you keep the positivity and the energy going, especially on those days where you've got to show up for everyone else?
Yeah.
Those days when you don't necessarily feel it yourself, how do you do that?
Right. So separating the personal from the work, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
something that I've always been taught since I was very young, like 18 years old. It was always wipe your feet at the door, and what you feel, what you are is like here, and you can feel it when you need to feel it, but not now. And you go to work, right? So because I've been ingrained with that since I was about 18 years old, even younger when I got a job when I was 14 and 9 months. I I then kind of look at my job now and I go, if I'm not feeling well, what's like my 100%? My 100% is firing on all cylinders, and that's giving everything I've got. But on the days I'm feeling 60% of my energy, I'm still going to rock up and I'm still going to give 100% of my 60. And it's looking at it through the way of what do the clients need? What are their needs? What do they deserve from me? And I know that if I can provide the basics, establishing connection, establishing some trust as well, and just genuine like connection and trust. You can build those two things if you're feeling terrible anyway. But it's just caring enough to have those conversations even when you're not feeling great, and being willing to not make it about you, to make it about them. So listening to them and actually allowing them to put their stuff forwards and put themselves, I guess, forwards. You can then help them through what they need to go through. Even on days where I struggle, I've definitely not been able to. I've had moments where I can switch off, but as soon as my switch comes on, I'm working. I'm okay. I'm giving 100% on my 50%, and that's still enough. And I know that's enough. And I've had to remind myself that that's okay. But when I can switch off in those moments, when I do occasionally go around the corner or to my mates for a second and I can go and switch, I then can stop and take and just kind of let it all out and decompress and feel what I need to feel for a little bit before I can switch back on again and give the clients or give the people what it is they deserve, which is genuine connection and care. And
Mm.
I think that's important.
Oh, so and connection would absolutely be your superpower, like,
Yes.
and trust, because obviously the work that you do, but the trust. And I've done a lot of things over the years where we've had instructors, but you were by far the best I've ever had. And I remember that when I had the retreat and when I was dealing with the summit, it's like, no, I have to have Steph. I have to have Steph. I have to have Steph. All of the
Yeah.
women connected with her, I need her. Now, that's not saying the others aren't amazing. I'm
No,
sure
of course
they all
not.
are.
Yeah.
But it's like we've established that connection. We need you. So just in
Yeah.
saying that, so you learned very quickly to be able to detach what's going on with you to what your
Yeah.
clients need, which allows you to turn up wholly. You said that back in your work when you were 18 and when you were 14 and 9 months.
Yeah.
What jobs did you do at those two stages where you learnt this? Because I've also
Yeah.
worked a long time. I didn't learn that.
No.
I don't think when you make pizzas, there's such a big deal about your emotional state.
Definitely. I think that because of my parents and because of my dad's an electrical engineer and he's had the same job for like 30 plus years, right? My mom's a nurse. So them having these two jobs, I've grown up watching them in awe and kind of watching how they do things. And I guess when you say you're a product of your parents, I just kind of look at them and go, all right, well, this is what it takes to work hard and do what you need to do to get where you need to get to. right? My dad's all about hard work, put in the work, and loyalty. My mum, same thing, loyalty, heart on her sleeve, works to the bone. And I, now that I'm an adult, I truly appreciate them so much more now than I did when I was a kid. Because when I was 14 and 9 months, my first job was at Charco's Chicken, being a server and actually like serving tables, being the cashier, chopping up chicken, making salads, kind of just doing the nitty gritty things that you're expected to do at that age. And I worked through like kind of like coming home from school, coming home from sport, and going to work 5 hour shifts, and then still juggling my homework, still juggling my sport, still juggling my mates. And I had to learn very quickly how to juggle. I didn't know how to juggle. I was like, okay, how do I manage my time? So I learned how to juggle a little bit by little bit as I added more responsibility. And as I got older, when I was 18, 17, 18 years old, I became a basketball coach. And then I was coaching 5-year-olds to 14-year-olds at schools after school activities. And yeah, that was teaching me how to like rock up to different locations at different times. And there were 2 hour stints. They weren't long shifts. They were like 2 hours here, then travel, go to the next place, go 2 hours here, be on time, be early. I think the best thing I ever got told was if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, that's not acceptable. So that's something I learned when I was like, yeah, that age, like younger, like 15, 16, 17, 18, I learned all those things. So when I did graduate from school, I then became a personal trainer, and then I learned how to manage people through that. And I worked in outdoor education as well. So I started doing my traineeship in outdoor ed, and I worked through and I learned the fundamentals of what it was to be an adult and adult responsibilities. And people told me what to do my entire life. And when I turned 18, and even now when I'm 30, I'm like, look, please someone tell me what to do. I beg you. And when you're younger, you just don't want to hear it. So I think growing up in an environment where I had so much room to grow and so much room to just be so aware, and having those role models in my life being my parents, it was really cool to kind of see myself transform into that way. And if I had any problems, I'd always go to them and help me. And they still do. Honestly, my parents are my biggest supporters. And yeah, I couldn't be happier for having them in my life. Super grateful.
Makes a difference, doesn't it? To have not just your parents in that role, but to have people that believe in you and support you. But, you know, you're talking about a lot of this is all around growth and development. You're always so optimistic and great. Were you always like this? Like, has this always been something that was part of you, or is it something you learned? Or
optimism, yeah. People have always called me painfully optimistic, and I think that's a funny statement. When I was younger, I got told I talked a lot, I was painfully optimistic, and I was just full of beans. And I feel like I've always been like that. I've never really shied away from being who I am. And when I know what I like, and when I know like who I like and who I want to hang out with, I think that's always been something that I've just wanted to be able to play. And the art of play has always been in me. And I've never let that really die. So I think as we get older, we forget to play, we forget to have fun, we forget to take it back a few steps, because sometimes we just take ourselves a bit too seriously. So when I've been growing up, I think I've realized I have three younger brothers, and they kept me always on my toes, and my mates always kept me on my toes. I was playing sport all the time. I've played about 18 different sports throughout my life. So I've tried everything, I've done everything. But I'd say, yeah, as far as being optimistic goes, I've been in a place where there was no optimism. And that was, younger, when I was traveling around a lot with my family. And all I had was my family, and I had nobody else. We traveled countries, we traveled to different schools, and I had to start my life again. And it just felt hard. So when those things felt hard, I just know that fundamentally all I could really be was me. And people either liked it or they didn't like it. But it wasn't easy. It was never easy. But I think the optimistic side of me has always just been there, because I feel like it doesn't mean I don't acknowledge the bad. I feel like I definitely do. Like, I acknowledge everything that is. That's what optimism is. I think a lot of people get that confused. It's not sunshine and rainbows for me every single day, but it's the ability to see the bad and acknowledge it, and then go, all right, well, I'm going to choose to focus on the good stuff. And when I realized that's what optimism meant, I was like, well, okay, well, that's exactly what I'm doing. And it's not a bad thing. So yeah, I think that's really helped me out. And yeah, optimism's just been my general thing throughout my
Mm.
whole life, which is kind of nice.
Oh, so cool. And just going back when you said about schools and having to move schools, and I know
Yeah,
I've had to do the same thing a number of times and I didn't like it.
no,
However, do you think that that also helped you develop that connection muscle? Because
yeah.
when you do get uprooted from where you've got friends and routine and familiarity to have to start all over again, do you
Mm,
think that helped you as hard as it and maybe as lonely as it might have been? Do you think
yeah.
that played a role?
Oh, definitely, for sure. I think part of the reason I like to be so social and connect with people is that I kind of didn't have a choice,
Yeah.
right? Like again, my connection with my family was so great, but we moved country we moved to Sweden when I was 7, and we lived
Mm.
there for like 7 years, right? So we were in this different country, no family, no nothing, and it was just my family, myself, and this country where we didn't even speak the language, right? Swedish. So we went to a public school and we learned the language. I had to learn a new language and learn to connect with people in their way. So all I could be was me. And then they kind of just went, okay. And then learning the language was kind of part of the process as well. So being there till about grade 7, then we decided to move to Singapore. And then when I moved to Singapore, I was there for 5 years. And that was the hardest move I did because when I was 12, I had connections from primary school, and that was okay. Like there's two of my best mates still to this day. But yeah, moving to Singapore, I had to leave all of that behind, all my establishments, all my connections. Moving to Singapore was in grade 8. That was in 2007, 2008. Lived there for 5 years. I graduated there too. So that's when I had to leave my friends that I was a teenager with. And I think that connection wise was the hardest because I was building
Mm.
friendships that I thought I was going to be taking with me, you know, throughout my entire life. And looking back at that, I came back in 2011 back to Australia when I was 18, turning 19 years old. And that's when I kind of went, well, now I've got family here, I've got relatives, but I like friends. Now I've got to start again, and I had to start again as an adult, and that was probably the hardest thing I could do. Connection was okay, but genuine connection was really hard to build
Mm.
because being a kid and building connection, you're seeing everyone at school all the time. It's easy, but then when I'm an adult and I've graduated, I've gone back to a country. Now I've got to meet people that I'm gonna build genuine connection with, and that was and is still, I'm not gonna lie, pretty hard. So connection
Mm.
has different forms and different levels and depths, I guess. I can connect with people, but genuine connection, having friends that are, you know, there for you for thick and thin, that is really hard to get, and something
Mm.
that I guess a lot of people, genuine people, search for. And I know I am still, I'm always looking, but yeah, I'm super grateful for the ones I have in my life currently that I've built with them.
Yeah. And you know, it's so interesting because you're talking about the moving and you had to you moved to countries where English wasn't even their first language, and
No,
you had to then be uprooted and move. I only had to move from Melbourne to Sydney and back to Melbourne. Like there's a walk in the park, right? In comparison. And all the cultural differences and everything that go with that, like having to
yeah,
take that on board. But even as grown-ups, and I loved earlier you referenced something about you had to learn to adult. you
yeah,
know,
pretty much. Still
yeah,
learning, still learning.
totally. There's a lot of people that haven't learned that lesson, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But learning to adult, and obviously learning to adult comes with making new connections at a surface level, making deeper connections where they do
yeah,
become those people that have you back. And it's not easy. And there
no,
is no, again, playbook on how to do that. So a lot of it is trial and error and what feels right. But through all the experiences that we have, we certainly can learn that. So yeah,
mm,
so one thing that really stood out for me when we were at the adventure park was, and I know I asked this, that we had 2 full days with you
yeah,
and did some pretty horrendous things. And I remember at one point I asked you for some feedback on what you interpreted like my reaction or my behavior was when we would attempt some of these obstacles and like what you'd picked up, because I noticed that you were very, very perceptive, not
yeah,
just at a group level, but at an individual level. And
yeah,
I was quite blown away with how right you were. And I'm happy to share, on this podcast
Yeah,
that
of
the
course.
one thing you said about me was that when you give an instruction, I don't just go and do it. I stop and I want to clarify. So what you're
Yeah.
telling me is I've got to do this, walk that, turn this, hold this, blah, blah. And apparently I did that before I would do
Mhm.
any obstacle.
You
And it's
did.
so funny because I walked away from that weekend going, and given I'm a coach as well, like I'm
Yeah.
obviously always wanting to, did I get that right? Did I hear this is what you said? But it was a really beautiful moment of here we go away on this obstacle course. And I went away with a whole lot of women I didn't know, but you were so perceptive around how I was treating these obstacles. And then I got you to share with each other person as well privately. And I know some people didn't want to share. How do you do that? Like, where's that come from? Because I can't teach you that.
No.
There's a school that teaches you how to be perceptive, but how to pick it up so quickly under those conditions. Where do you
Yeah.
think that comes from?
Um,
Or how does
I,
it play out for you?
that's a really good question. Not many questions tell me, and I think it's it's always been an innate thing that I've been a very observant person. I've had to, I guess, growing up, observe people and how they are in their body language and assess, I guess, different things about them when they come up to me. I'm already figuring out what they're thinking before they're thinking it, or observing behavior. And part of my job is observing behavior. That's what I do as a coach here. To be honest, a lot of it's just observing and people watching and looking at why people are the way they are, why they say the things they say, and what that core reason is. And I may not know that core reason, and I may never know because people only share what they share, right? But all I can do is observe behavior and their actions and also their body language. And a lot of our communication, as we know, is actually through our body language. It's not actually through our words. People don't, and I think the biggest quote I've ever learned was people don't ever remember what you say. They remember how you make them feel. And I think that that's the key thing about all of this, right? You asked me how I knew that about yourself. I bank things in my brain, right? If I'm with you guys and with clients and what you want to get out of this, what are your outcomes? Your outcomes were to be courageous, to step out of your comfort zone, to do all these things. So I'm actively looking at, are you giving me excuses? Are you giving me reasons? Are you searching for certainty? What do you need? Right? Everyone's got those needs. Some people have a need for certainty and some people have a need for uncertainty. Some people have a need for connection and love. They need it. Some people have a connection for growth, like growth and contribution is a big one. And they need all these things in their life in a day that makes them who they are. And you needed certainty, and I could see that immediately. So when you were doing these things, and I was like, "Oh, you need certainty. That's okay. I'm just going to give you all the certainty, and then that's going to help out." But when you ask me things about you, I'm like, "Did you know that you do this?" And sometimes it's interesting when I say this. I'm like, "Well, surely they know they're doing this stuff." I that's bizarre to me. So when I do say it to people and you get this reaction, I go, oh well, that actually makes it better for me because I'm like, well, if people don't know, then I want to tell them. I want to give them feedback if you ask, because you never know unless you tell somebody, right? So I think that was really cool.
Oh, it was so cool. And no, I didn't know that about me
Yeah.
because, one of the things that I'd kind of always thought is that I embrace the unknown. And here I was. And you very, very, and when I thought back to all of the different obstacles, it's like, oh, I did do that. Oh my gosh. And again, thinking you've done a fair bit of work on yourself to have in such a short period of time, someone give you that feedback. It's like, wow, that was so powerful. And I know some of the other girls, some didn't want to share and totally respect that.
And that's fine, yeah.
But every single one of them said, yeah, she nailed me. She absolutely got me right in that short period of time. And I found that part really useful. Like I just wanted to pick your brain and I wanted to go, tell me something that you've learned. But of course, I respect their privacy and that they can't do that. So when it comes to courage, and obviously in the work that you're doing, what are some of the main things do you think stop people from doing it? So yes, you've got a fear of heights and you don't want to climb up that height, yet everyone else in their group is doing it. For those that don't, and you're
Mm,
very, very respectful on giving enough of a push, but not making somebody, you don't want
yeah.
people vomiting out of fear. But
No.
what are some of the common themes that you really see every day doing what you
Mm.
do?
So I think with courage in general, like we present again, like I said, we present them with an opportunity. They come to us and we go, "Hey, here's this activity you're about to do. This is how you do it safely. Set a bit of an intention, set a bit of a goal before you do it. Know what you want to get out of this activity, so we can talk about it afterwards, right? That's the basics of it. But what I find that's most common is a lot of people do have again that baggage, that idea, and it's about I guess that fear response and being uncomfortable. Some people are used to being put in uncomfortable situations and working through it, and they have really good ways to regulate themselves when they feel uncomfortable. Some people haven't learned to do that regulating for themselves and soothing for themselves. So when they get into an uncomfortable situation or being willing to try it, they don't want to. So they actively try to fight it in whatever way they can. So I find that a lot of people are very like I guess hesitant. So they'll tell you excuses. They'll say everything under the sun to not do it. And it could be, oh, it's because of the past, it's because of this, it's because of that. It isn't. And we know that. And we know it's a reason. So I ask them genuinely all the time, like, hey, well, how about we look a bit deeper? How about an honest answer? So why do you think you can't do this activity? Or you think you can't? Because everything in here we give them is possible, physically, absolutely possible. So we know that. So it's something in here.
It's mental.
So whatever it is mentally that's going in for them, it could be anything. And this is depending on how much baggage they're carrying, right? And I don't know that. But as soon as they come up to me and start talking to me about who they are and what they want to do, I see a lot of it in the first few steps they come up to me. I know that they're nervous. I know that there's something blocking them. There's a block there. And we've got to try to figure out in a very small amount of time what the block is, how to overcome it by giving them certain strategies. And I think that we give them a strategy here called target, stretch, and super stretch. So a target is something you can definitely do, like an easy win, something to get them a bit of momentum. Then we set a stretch, something they think they can do, something that is out of their comfort zone, will make them uncomfortable, but it's going to stretch them. That's the idea. And we set a super stretch. A super stretch is something that they don't think they can do. Like when they rock up to an activity, they look at something and they're thinking, yeah, no, I can't do that. That's that super stretch. However, it is still possible, but they think it isn't. So if we ask them to set these things before they even start the activity, to get a bit of a plan, of a bit of again, like an intention to do the activity, to help them gain reference to reflect upon afterwards. Because if they go into something not knowing what they want, they're going to get whatever they get afterwards, and they're not going to know how well they did. They're not going to know how much they overcame. So I think we as coaches give them strategies as much as possible to help them identify how they're feeling, locating how they're feeling, what they want out of the activity, and then doing the best they can, whether it's the full activity or half of the activity or just some of it. What is that plan they want to do? And help them achieve those steps, as many as they can. And then that's when that debrief comes in afterwards. How do you feel? And what did you get out of it? Comes in handy so much. I think that's the be all and end all what we do, and how we kind of push through those insecurities, those walls. And in again, short amount of time, you only have like 5 minutes, 10 minutes with a kid, or a student or a client or anybody, and you've got to really establish that connection, build that trust, and then work with them together. And you do that through several different strategies, but that target stretch super stretch is definitely the main one we do with them to help them create a plan for themselves.
What a beautiful idea, though, like, target, stretch, and super stretch. And I read a book years ago, and I've referenced it many times on the podcast, called The C Word, which is confidence, by Mel Schilling, who was one of the experts on maths. And she doesn't talk about jumping out of your comfort zone. She talks about expanding your comfort zone. And I love that, because I think sometimes the jump out, again, it's semantics, but it's too big. Whereas the stretching, and that's kind of like going, like what you said, target, stretch, and super stretch. It's that gradual progress to get you, to that super stretch stage, but without going from total fear to super stretch in one jump. Too big.
Because our brains can't handle that, it can't.
No, that's oh my God, I've never heard it explained like that, but that is
Mm.
so beautiful. And again, you've got such a short period of time
Oh,
to be
yeah.
able to assess and different age groups, different, again, all the invisible stuff that someone's
Yeah.
bringing to the table. You can't see. It's not like they're carrying a physical
Mm-mm.
backpack. It's in that invisible one, and you got to work it all out. Very, very clever. Just what scares you?
What scares me?
Mm,
I think what scares me is, oh, that's a very big question. In what way? Can you give me a bit more about that?
anyway,
What scares me?
what's your biggest fear? In
My
any
biggest, whoa.
so let's just
um,
go for the jugular, Steph. I've come this far with you.
Crazy.
Let's just go into it.
Thinking about that. My biggest fear would probably just be, you know, settling for average and being on autopilot the rest of my life. Just kind of cruising through life, not having any direction, bouncing around, and kind of just existing. My biggest fear is settling down or just settling for something I don't deserve. And that scares me so much.
For just answering that question, because none of these questions are expected. I know that I'm just going on the fly.
No, I love it.
Because I was asked a few years ago at dinner with a friend of mine, he said to me, "What's your biggest fear?" And do you know what mine was? I
Well,
said, my biggest fear is not reaching my potential.
there you
That
go.
so you're very, very similar. That I've got so much I want and know I'm capable of, and not getting there, which means I do have to go down the path of overcoming the fear and being
Mm,
courageous, or else I'm going to live up and experience my greatest fear. So thank you for playing that game, and what a beautiful, beautiful answer. I'm so not surprised. So
mm.
on that note, what's the next thing in your life that you're doing or want to do that you've got to really reach in and find some courage for?
Mm. So I guess my next stage of my life would be somehow figure like building a family. And
Ah, mm,
yeah. So
yeah.
being married, having my husband in my life, I love him to pieces, and we wanna establish that more. So we're married, we are a family, we want to do these things, but the financials are always getting in the way for us. So we've really got to think about what we want, and we want kids, we want a family, we want a life. But setting that up, setting the groundwork up for us. Like been offered, like I got offered the full time employment here, so I do work here, and I've had work at the summit for 1 to 2 years now as that contracted thing, which gives me stability in a paycheck, which is something that I've, as a casual with a million jobs, never had before. So having stability is the first step that we wanted to, and we talked about that when we got married, or even before we got married, really. To now kind of getting to a stage now he's gonna have his house in order as well, and then both of our houses being ordered to then make those steps, and kind of now it's creating those tick boxes, what we need to kind of milestones we need to meet or want to meet before we move forwards in those directions. And it's scary to do. It's scary to kind of acknowledge that I want to do that and build, like, have a family. I want to have kids. And then thinking about doing that now freaks me out. I'm like, well, when, how, what? And all those questions always go in my head. When are you going to do it? What are you going to do it? And then what are you going to do next? How is that going to work? And I think all those questions are normal. I realized if I didn't have those questions going through my head, something would be wrong.
Mm.
So my next step would be, sorting out like finances from both ends, sorting out a few different areas in our lives where we want to make sure that we have the stable jobs, the stable house, the support systems around in place that we need, that we feel like we need to work through it, and yeah, get
Mm.
started. But the wheels are already in motion, which is good. But it's just ticking off those milestones. Really just coming along for me.
Beautiful. Oh, I love it. You're quite fine to jump off, really high things and
Yeah.
get knocked down, underneath. By the way, if you do remember when I did that wombat hole, you shut the door on me.
Yes,
Yes.
I did.
That's not scary for you. It's like the whole next stage in family and life, and yeah,
Yeah,
totally understand. And I look forward to interviewing you again in the future and seeing how all of this has progressed. So, but
absolutely.
if anyone does want to follow along or want some information about, coming down to the summit, is the website the best place to go?
Absolutely. Website's
Yep.
the best place to go. We have, the email address there. Email our lovely ladies at the office. They are more than happy to book you guys in for anything you're looking for. Honestly, it's a place you can take schools, groups, functions, for any reason,
Retreat.
any outcome. Yeah, retreats as well. Honestly, come down, do your thing. And if you want to always request stuff, you can always request myself. But all the other stuff, again, do an amazing job. I love what I do, and they're like my family. So yeah, you'd be happy with absolutely any one of them, I'm sure.
Although I've got another retreat booked for October, and I have said I need Steph. So you are not allowed to have holidays in the first week of October, by the way, because you're doing our women's retreat again.
Oh, beautiful. Love that.
We have to have you, Steph. We have to have you. So thank you so much for coming on board. Thank you for sharing. Oh, I just wanted to ask you one more thing. And fruit. No, it's just slipped my mind.
Yeah,
Nope.
that's okay.
That's okay. I'll ask you another time. Thank you for coming on board. Absolutely loved talking to you. Your wisdom. You are so wise beyond your years. It's quite remarkable. So really appreciate everything you've shared with us today. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot, Kim, and I'll see you in October, I'm sure.
Definitely, because you're our instructor.
Absolutely. All right, well, thanks for having me on the podcast. This was something that was, again, super courageous for me to do. It's something out of my comfort zone, but I appreciate you having me on the program. You hassled me hard, but I'm here. So
you're a rock star. Thank you so much. Cheers.
No worries at all.